not where you think you're going to be.
Absolutely. And I'd love to have you sort of expand on that. I feel like as women, oftentimes we put happiness on hold. We sort of live this life of, well, when I achieve this or when I get this, once this happens, and then we forget about everything that's going on around us and all of the beauty in our life and the freedom that's there that we can create right here and right now.
Exactly. Yes. And that's very common for a lot of women. I know through the times that I've coached people and that I've helped women, one of the biggest things is debt. Debt is something that weighs on people very heavily, and they feel that the only way they will feel free or confident about their money situation is once they pay off their debt. And I'm not saying that that's not the case or that's not how you're going to feel, but the truth is that it's not the end all be all. And I've seen it time and time again where people don't have debt, but that doesn't necessarily equal that all of a sudden they feel free in their money situation or that they feel confident about their money situation. Because you go and let's say you spend all of your energy doing this one thing, and then once you get to the one thing, you're like, okay, what next? Or what now? Or where am I? Or what am I supposed to do? Right? And so and like you said, like instead of kind of giving ourselves like that well-roundedness of our financial picture, we're only focusing on one thing.
Hi, and welcome to the show. You are on the Cheap Mama Life podcast. And today I have Damari Gold as our guest. I am super excited. She's got a background in accounting and has been through all the ups and downs that women today face each and every day in our financial lives. And I'm really excited for her to share her story with us. And so I'm going to give you a few minutes to introduce yourself, Damari, and then we'll get going and see what we can teach our listeners out there today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Damari Perez, aka Damari Gold, my artist name. And I am the owner of the Gold Standard Accounting and Tax here in Huntington Beach, California. We are licensed tax practitioners, and we help clients with bookkeeping, tax planning, and so on. But my purpose in life, or what I like to ideally say that I was created for, is really to help women understand that you can create freedom in your life when it comes to money at any wage. And through my own trials and tribulations and struggles and triumphs of when it comes to money, I feel that I have a lot to impart. And also speaking from a first generation American that has been through lots of different struggles, but also find myself here as a business owner, making good money, providing for my family, but someone that doesn't own assets, if that makes sense. So, so I want, to kind of give that to your listeners, that there is freedom created is where you are right now, not where you think you're going to be.
Absolutely. And I'd love to have you sort of expand on that. I feel like as women, oftentimes we put happiness on hold. We sort of live this life of, well, when I achieve this or when I get this, once this happens, and then we forget about everything that's going on around us and all of the beauty in our life and the freedom that's there that we can create right here and right now.
Exactly. Yes. And that's very common for a lot of women. I know through the times that I've coached people and that I've helped women, one of the biggest things is debt. Debt is something that weighs on people very heavily, and they feel that the only way they will feel free or confident about their money situation is once they pay off their debt. And I'm not saying that that's not the case or that's not how you're going to feel, but the truth is that it's not the end all be all. And I've seen it time and time again where people don't have debt, but that doesn't necessarily equal that all of a sudden they feel free in their money situation, or that they feel confident about their money situation. Because you go and let's say you spend all of your energy doing this one thing, and then once you get to the one thing, you're like, okay, what next? Or what now? Or where am I? Or what am I supposed to do? Right. And so and like you said, like instead of kind of giving ourselves like that well-roundedness of our financial picture, we're only focusing on one thing. And so it's like, you have to understand that once you get there, that doesn't necessarily automatically mean you're going to feel a certain way. I owe $110,000 in student loans. And for some people, that is something that is just like, I cannot have this hanging over my head. I need to pay this off. I need this to be out of my plate. I don't feel that way. I understand that I'm paying interest. I understand all of those things and all those implications. But to me, debt is an exchange, whether that be good debt, bad debt, however you want to look at it. Debt is an exchange of something you either wanted or something that you needed as an asset, whatever that is, whether that be a student loan, because I needed an education. I needed that in order to be where I am today. So it was an exchange. And unfortunately, that's how much it cost me to get a master's degree in accounting and finance. But, you know, at some point, I do believe that either I'm going to pay it back or somehow, some way, somehow it's going to happen. You know, it's going to happen. But I'm not stressed about it. And it's not holding me or preventing me from living the life that I desire, or from me starting my business. Or that wasn't the reason that I held off and decided not to do anything, not go on vacation, not eat out all the time. So all of those sacrifices come with, let's say, just focusing on paying off debt. And if you're ready and willing to do that, then great. But it really needs to suit you in your life, in your definition of what you want for yourself. When people are in credit card debt, you know, am I like going off on a tangent and I'm just like going?
No, go ahead.
Okay?
Go ahead. Yep.
So when people, you know, with credit card debt, a lot of times people are very, they feel very burdened by it, right? But they forget that at some point they did it for a reason. You know, it was either you wanted clothing, or you had to go to a hospital, or, you know, everything is an exchange, or you purchased a home and now you have debt of a home, right? You wanted that house, or you wanted a place to live, or you wanted that. So, okay, then now you have debt that is associated with it. And understanding that it is a numbers game, balancing. We have to learn how to balance our debt. What does that mean? It means that understand that yes, debt will be there, but debt doesn't have to control what you're doing in your life. I believe that you have to define what freedom means to you, what success means to you, and how you want to apply that in your life in order for you to feel like you're living a full, fulfilled life.
So you and I are definitely on absolutely opposing views when it comes
Really?
to debt.
All right, then let's
For
talk about
sure.
it.
And for me, as someone who had debt, I had started, you know, and again, I was taught it was good debt, right? The debt that I had was all for really outside of the house. You know, there were the cars, you know, those were things that you had to have and then there was keeping the business afloat when the market crashed back in 2008, and following the advice of other professionals. And I ended up hearing from somebody that said, look, take a look at someone who's been in your industry for 5 years longer than you have. And do you want their results? And I got to tell you, in the crash of 2008, there was nobody around me whose results I wanted. I mean, there were people who were in massive debt because they owned brokerages, they owned market centers. Some of them were committing suicide.
Oh yeah.
Others were out there pounding the pavement again. They were, you know, door to door, doing everything they could for work. And that was where I found myself, trying to, you know, still doing the same amount of transactions and not being able to keep up, because now a transaction might pay me a couple $100 versus the 10,000 it was paying, depending on how far that particular property type. I mean, I remember selling one and getting a $700 commission. because it was like a $7,000 condo that,
Yeah.
that had been selling for, 110 before.
Yeah.
And I realized then that because of the economies going up and down, that, when I borrowed, I was borrowing from my future endeavors, my working capacity in the future. And I don't know what my future is going to bring, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what my working capacity is, how much I'm going to make. And now I've got this debt that, even though it's comfortable today, I learned then that it wasn't comfortable,
Back then.
and I had believed I'd done everything right. I mean, even from the debt on the assets, the investment properties, like, okay, I did it right. The income, even if it was a negative amortization loan so that it would cash flow. And even if for the entire 5-year term of that loan or 10-year term that it added to the principal, it was never going to catch up. Never did I foresee the market plummeting the way it
did.
So, here same thing with the vehicles. You needed to look successful. And what I learned after I paid the debt off was that, my clients didn't care what I drove. What they wanted was what was I bringing to the table? What value was I giving to them when I took them out on a real estate transaction? In fact, I only had one person ever say anything about my little Toyota Camry that was completely paid off, that we paid for cash. And it was ugly. I mean, in fact, I kept hubcaps on the passenger side and not on the driver's side because we were missing 2 hubcaps.
Wow.
And I just remember, and there was only one person that ever said anything. He's like, man, I thought you'd drive a Land Rover. And I'm like, nope, not unless I bought it cash. And he's like, okay. And that was the extent of the conversation. I think so many of us walk around and I don't know if men do this, but I know as women, we certainly do, worried about what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
We're worried about what perception we're putting out there, how we look. So we're putting the nails on, getting the hair done. And I sacrificed to get out of that debt. And now, we just went on the most incredible vacation we'd ever gone on because there's money in savings, because I don't have debt working against us. We've got the ranch we've always dreamed of. We have horses on the property. So for me, and I remember back then thinking I needed to make at least $15,000 to $20,000 to cover the expenses every single month, because I was also counting my monthly debt payments. And now that we have no debt, I have the freedom not to do anything if I choose. Yeah. Because I don't have those payments,
Did you pay your house outright?
The house is the only thing that we are not completely debt free on. And we will be. I mean, we have not, while everybody else is taking cash out loans to make theirs all fancy, we have a couple 100,000 equity, and we should be completely paid off within 2.5, 3 years.
Nice. Well, I would like to point out some items that you mentioned. Yeah. One was, you said, take a look at who, the person that asked you, like, who do you want to mimic, or what is it, the person that you wanted to see, right? So, and you're talking about fancy things. In what I teach, I don't talk about fancy things. If you like fancy things, then good for you. Then that's what you like. But what you normally find in a lot of Americans is that they can get themselves out of debt, but they don't know how to live within their means. That's one.
I agree. Delayed gratification.
Exactly. So a lot of people don't know. So what happens is that they could pay off debt, but then they're either fearful that any debt is going to put them back where they were. So there's that mindset that plays a part. Second is, like you mentioned, you were driving a Camry and with hubcaps and all of this, and that's great. And that may be a sacrifice that you were willing to make, but some people cannot and do not feel like that is the sacrifice that they can make. And so when it comes to having a reliable vehicle, I'm in the side that says, if that is going to protect your family, and that is going to, I'm not talking about having a Mercedes.
Right.
I'm talking about if you have a Subaru
Mhm.
and you have to have a reliable vehicle. Why? Because most people don't have $5,000 if their car breaks down. You don't know how many times I've heard, like, my car is about to take a dump and I either have to spend the money to fix it so that I don't have a car payment, or I go and get a car payment, but yet I'm not sure if I have a reliable vehicle. So sometimes if you don't have a husband, if it's just you and you don't know how to fix a car, or you go to a mechanic, where most of the time, I think everybody could agree, a lot of times mechanics take advantage of women
Mhm.
and they don't have the money to fix it. So this is where I say you have to find balance within yourself and what does success mean to you? Like you said, for you, you're ranch and having horses. My ex used to have horses. Horses are not cheap.
Right.
So at all. So I remember that bill being for hay alone, $6,000 for, what is it, a squeeze or the truckload. I'm not sure, maybe you get hay a lot cheaper, but out here, that's not the case. Vet bills and so on. And so I really feel that it has to suit your life and what you want to accomplish for yourself. And if your audience is looking to live the lifestyle that you maybe have or represent, right? Because it's not all about, do I look a certain way? Do I look fancy? Do you like what I represent?
Right.
Do you want to feel what I represent? And for me, I'm filling in that representation. It's not the representation of, if you want to look fancy and have a bunch of debt. No, do you want to feel confident about what you're doing? Do you want to feel like you're in freedom in your life? Because some people might be living humble starts, but they don't feel free.
Right.
They don't. They still feel held, bogged down by something. And so whatever that is, and that's my point, I guess, is that whatever is causing you to feel bogged down, whatever's causing you to feel like you're never going to get out of that situation, don't lose heart. If you are steady, steadfast, and consistent with your actions, you will get there. You will get there no matter what your goal is, whether that's paying off debt, saving money, saving for retirement, and so on. It's just a matter of us staying consistent with it.
I 100% agree with you. And I think that, and I think that the bottom line is, for most people, when you get into the credit cards, debts, and those types of things, for most people, that is not practicing living within your means. And it's a delayed gratification. It's a not practicing delayed gratification issue. So, and there are situations. I mean, I sat down with my son and his fiance who don't have the money to go buy a car cash. Not everybody, it takes time to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
It does take time to get to that point. And in the meantime, I'm also teaching them, hey, make sure you have an emergency savings fund, so that the next time you have to get a car, you don't have interest working against you. The next, so that the next time around you're putting in replacement money. No, not everybody can absolutely.
And don't forget, there's 0% financing.
Right.
So, if credit, and you know this more than anyone too, credit is a numbers game.
Yes.
You have to use it, and you have to use it responsibly in order for you to be able to get loans and things like that. A lot of people that go into business for themselves don't have the startup, don't have the capital, can't afford to do what they're doing. I've used nearly almost all of my savings. I had to get into more debt in order to see my office through, but it's a temporary type thing, because I had to spend that money in order for the build out, right? But if I just got stuck on, I'm going to wait until I save enough to be able to fully build out my office and fully not have any debt or not have to borrow against it, then I don't necessarily think that I would be where I am right now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes, again, finding that balance in your debt, finding that balance in your credit, finding the balance in your saving money, and hitting all of the financial buckets that you want to. I think a lot of people, what they fail to understand is that not everybody wants to go into real estate and have assets in that way.
No.
Not everybody is knowledgeable about cryptocurrency and making all of the money in that type of stock or that type of, exchange. The stocks, things that we were talking about, investments.
Right.
Not everybody has the capacity. My mom, actually, she was an immigrant, and at some point she purchased a home and she got bought out by a company that was rebuilding and all these things. She used that money and invested in other property. And my mom, bless her little heart, she's a millionaire in assets. But she still holds fast to her roots, which is survival. And to her, it's very stressful to have rental property, because if a renter doesn't want to pay her, well, guess who has to pay for it? She does.
Yeah,
and you can't just kick people out, right? If something breaks, who has to pay for it? You do. Real estate taxes, you have to come out of pocket for those things.
And I'm absolutely a proponent of if you're going to invest in something, you really should take the time to learn. I mean, it's okay to hire a financial planner. And when that financial planner comes and says, well, I think we should put everything here, then
why?
Then you need to understand why. You need to understand what that is, what the pros and cons are. And I think all too often we think, well, hands up in the air. I don't know how to do this, so I'm just going to hire somebody. And then we don't necessarily know what's going on, or we take the advice of somebody else. And I don't feel like we should if we're going to take advice from people with fruit on the tree, not broke people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, if you want to have a successful business, go to somebody who can coach you on how to have a successful business.
Or someone that has the business that you're looking, right, that you feel that they have maybe the understanding that you're looking for, because that's another thing that a lot of people on the outside, they pretend to have some sort of success. And so that's what we buy into. And that's a sales strategy for everyone. And I think that that's probably why I'm so blunt or blatantly honest about where I am financially, because the truth for me is that you see what I have, or you see where I'm at. And if you feel that I represent something that you want for your life, then that is what I'm here to show you, or here to talk about. But if somebody else has the ideal for yourself, for how you want to live your life, and you feel like they have the formula that can help you, then, go ahead and do that, follow that. That's why I'm not set on don't pay off debt. It's just find what the right balance for you. If that is something that you want to accomplish and you feel that it will make a difference or impact your life dramatically, then go ahead. Because you know what? Another thing is that a lot of people need discipline, and many people don't have that. I find that people will, maybe pay off their debt, but then as soon as something goes wrong, they go right back into it, kind of thing.
Right.
Or
that's my biggest pet peeve right now, is people are using debt to pay off debt, right? Everybody's diving into their equity right now. And it's the way it's being sold to them. Hey, use your equity, get out of debt, go do your home improvements and things like that. And we've already forgotten that
2008 and 2008.
We've already forgotten 2008. We've already forgotten markets crash. And they don't learn anything that way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's, the point that you made very early on, and discipline, delayed gratification, living within your means, at some point, debt can become a beast. Yes, it can be a tool, and it can be a very effective tool for somebody who has discipline, for somebody who has the ability
that knows how to use it,
to pay it and use it. And it doesn't mean that everybody knows how to use it.
And that's my point, because, you had talked about in 2008, 2009, the same for me. That's the year that I filed for bankruptcy. My husband and I, at the time, I'm no longer married, but at the time we were living on $44,000. I had gotten laid off. He got a pay cut, and we had a second mortgage. We had whatever, the home equity line of credit, credit card debt, because we had just gotten married like a year before, 2 years before. And so we were overwhelmed,
Right.
and we didn't know like what was the best avenue for us. Honestly, if I think about it now, we probably would have been okay if we would have just stuck our guns, but we were kind of like, okay, well, let's just reset financially, you know, like start over, clean slate. We don't have credit card debt. Unfortunately, the student loans don't go with that.
Right.
So we were living on $45,000 for a number of years. And luckily the home that we had, it was a small house. So we were able to really live within our means during that time, because we didn't have an excess of other things that we needed to pay for. Like you mentioned, other people that had investments and so on, investment properties. But it was still such a learning experience, because I felt embarrassed. I felt like, man, I just hit total financial rock bottom. And can I just tell you that it's not?
I've been through it. I've been through it myself. I mean, it is, again, it's a tool. And, and one of the things, it was the same thing. I mean, for me in 2008, short sales. I mean, I was family after family after family, helping them short sale, and was even able to, there is evidence of short sales in scripture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that, there's,
people losing their home.
it's a tool, and you're right. It's devastating. It's very, very difficult to go through. And so, I think we both have hearts to help people fortify their financial lives, especially women, period, as they go on. So let's take a quick break, and we will jump back in and start talking about some of those tools that we can use as women, some of those actions that we can take to really fortify our position and have the confidence that we can weather whatever storm is thrown at us.
Yes.
Let's take a short second real quickly to acknowledge our sponsor. I want to tell you about a podcast, Radicalize. If you are sick and tired, and maybe you just to an awe of like, what can we do about these political extremists, these conspiracies, this disinformation that's headed all across the media, and we don't know how to control it or get a handle of it? Well, Liz is on the job. Liz Wall, she traces the roots and rise of America's modern political extremist, conspiracy, and disinformation movements. This podcast will get you right up to date and get you what you need, so you will never be in the dark. Check it out on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Check it out right now. Leave a review, and when you binge all of the previous episodes, make sure in the review you let them know that the Transform You Media Network sent you right over, Marcus Hart that is, sent you right over to check it out. Leave a 5-star, because man, I listened to some of the episodes and I'm blown away. I can't get enough. Let's do it.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Brenda Kilhover, and I'm your Cheap Mama. Welcome to the Cheap Mama Life podcast. We are here with Damari Gold, and we spent the first 20 minutes talking about essentially debt and how we view debt. And we're going to spend some time this second half talking about some practical steps that you can make towards your own financial success, how you view that. And I really would like Damari to share some of her stories, some of her ups and downs and pitfalls, and we'll talk about how we get out of those pitfalls. So going to turn it on over to you, Damari.
Thank you. So throughout my 20s, in and out of credit card debt, 10,000, 20,000. Then in 2009, we filed for bankruptcy. So kind of clean slate, but then I got back into it. I got back into the game and having vehicles and so on. But For me, I have always been big on saving money. That has something that, whether that is through my childhood, or I'm not sure if my mom really necessarily talked to me about it, but saving money has always been a bigger part of my journey. And I believe that having an emergency savings account and having plenty of money saved for me has always been more important than how much debt you have. I get that debt incurs interest. So I often tell people, okay, well, if you can consolidate some of your debt, or if you can go into 0% financing and really tackle that debt into a place where you can avoid paying interest or avoid paying as much interest as possible. Saving money, I believe, gives people the more of a benefit as far as like helping you feel more comfortable about your financial situation. And the reason why is because, as you have experienced yourself as well, is that if you lose your job, if you somehow don't have credit anymore, if something happens health-wise, or your vehicle, things like that, you have a cushion to help you, and it avoids you getting into more debt. So if you have that cushion, then at least you're able to use some of that, and it helps you feel at more peace and liberty to make financial decisions that could impact you in any which way, which could mean leaving your job or changing jobs, like many of us experienced in 2020, that shift, right? So we're able, if you had money saved, then you would feel more comfortable. But I learned early on about saving money, but I think the delayed gratification is something that was very difficult for me to take hold of. And I think until probably these last probably ever since my divorce, because that's another thing. I got a divorce, I walked away with nothing and just money that I had saved. And so finishing graduate school and taking care of my kids, I'm in California, guys. It's so expensive here. And worried about that, it was, again, survival mode. And we had talked on the break that for most of my adult life, I worked 2 jobs. And my thought always was that if I worked hard, or if I worked a lot, or as long as I maintained 2 jobs, I would, 1, pay off my debt, 2, be better off, 3, create long-term wealth. And somehow, some way, that was a sense of security for me. And to tell you the truth, it's sustainable only if you feel that that's what you like. But I don't know that having 2 jobs is always sustainable for most people long-term. I think that we're starting to realize there's a shift in the mentality and what we want for ourselves. So I think getting clear with what you want for yourself, and that was a big pivot for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, I think when it comes to jobs, in general, jobs are kind of a bad word for me. And only because I mean, unless you are doing what you absolutely wanted to do, like, let's just say, you always wanted to teach at college level, and you're a professor, and that is your passion, it's your purpose, and you love it, then by all means go and get a job. Yes. And at the end of the day, the 45-year plan is probably not going to work out for you either. Yeah. On some level, as throughout the world, we have to have another stream of income. And many of us do go, whether it's through investment strategies, whether it's through a business, whether, some other stream, because the bottom line is, with inflation, with, with the cost of living, with the fact that, when we are getting into debt, we're getting into debt for longer and longer and longer terms, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Whether it's our car, whether it's, and yes, it's sustainable now. And is it going to, when we retire from a standard job on half to 2/3 of our income, is it going to be sustainable? And I don't think most people think about that. So I would agree, working 2 jobs is not, for 2 jobs' sake, is still not going to get us ahead, especially as a mom. I mean, heck, now you're paying daycare for,
You don't see your kids.
right. You don't see the
Mhm.
kids. One of the jobs is practically paying for daycare. You know,
Mhm.
when we,
Oh my gosh, yes.
when we took on second opportunities, I mean, we did gig, we
Uh-huh.
jumped into the gig economy with
economy.
Uber and stuff. When we were broke, we jumped into that, and it was with specific intent to pay the debt off. Like
Mhm.
we figured out, how do we live within
your
our
means.
means on our regular paycheck, but we were in a place where we were never going to make a dent on the
Mhm.
debt unless we did something else. And what's important to note is exactly what you said. The first step for us was paying ourselves first. So
First.
many times people who are in debt will focus on the debt before
Mhm.
they start building an emergency savings fund, before
Exactly.
they start putting money aside. And we actually skipped payments and let the credit worsen, knowing that we could fix that when the time came, to make sure that we put our emergency savings in, to
And
make
that
sure that we put stuff
100%.
in.
Yes. And that I 100% agree with you. I've told people so many times, credit can be fixed. You know, when I
Mhm.
thought I hit rock bottom, we filed for bankruptcy. Well, guess what? I have good credit. I
Yeah.
have decent credit now, but people will still let me borrow money. Trust me, if I really wanted to.
Absolutely.
But it can be fixed. And something that I think is very common throughout is there's a couple of things that I ask people. And if your listeners are really interested in really finding out their true money story, or what they feel that they're practicing, or what their values are, a question to ask yourself is what was your first experience with money? So I'll give you an example. For me, my mom had many jobs. She was a hustler because she was an immigrant. So she cleaned houses, she sold on yard sales, she bought clothing from a certain place and would resell it door to door, and did what she had to do for survival. Now, within me, I sometimes go into survival mode, and I see that, and I see it a lot in my mother still to this day, which I've told you guys. She has a lot of properties. She's well off now, but she still goes to that initial place where she knows is survival. And I do as well. Sometimes I think, when is it ever going to be enough for me? Because I can tell you that I've had $50,000 saved, but it doesn't feel like it's enough.
Right.
It feels like, oh my gosh, but then if I pay this, or if I do that, and then all of a sudden it dwindles down and I have nothing, right?
Mhm.
And then we start kind of running these scenarios. And so this is why I tell people not to focus on the debt, because the truth of the matter is, if you get yourself in a hole, chances are you probably don't have any more wiggle room to get into any other hole.
Right.
So work on living, like you said, practically living within your means. Work on getting that discipline down first. And we talked about like Christmases and having a sacrifice during Christmas and so on. Something that you'd find interesting about me is that I don't buy my kids any Christmas gifts. I allow for one gift for Santa to give. And that might mean that the gift might be a little bit more expensive, but not necessarily in a way where I feel like, let's say a bicycle, like that's something that I'm willing to spend on for my child because I know they're going to use it and go outside and so on. But, you know, the conditioning that we have is the same conditioning that we are giving to our children. So the words that we use, if you take back, or if you take an inventory of your history, what words did your parents use? What things did they impose in you? Did you feel like when they said to you, no, we can't buy that for you because we don't have money, or money doesn't grow on trees, or certain things that triggered you so that later on you overcompensated as an adult?
Absolutely.
Right?
Right. I mean, that was definitely my first round with getting into debt was well, I deserve this. Well, I'm making my own money now, so I can get it, because it was always, well, is it your money? Is it your money? No, it's not. I'm not getting that, just the different things. So it was like, well, it's my money, so I can do what I want with it. And I got into trouble with it, because it was sort of this, and did buying that really truly fill my cup and make me feel any more worthy? No, it was an empty vessel. It was,
And I think everyone could relate to that, that instant gratification goes away. And this is why we buy again, because it's for a moment. It really is. You're just giving yourself that one instance, that one hit of dopamine. And then you go and buy again, and you need to refill that again. And then we have our houses full of stuff and full of stuff. Like, this is why they say, like, if you clean out your things, like how you feel more clear, right? But there's also times when you have to recognize your patterns, because, okay, so I have a shoe addiction. And in 2020, I said I wasn't going to buy any more shoes because, okay, no judgment, but yes, I have like well over 50 pairs of shoes. Okay. And I don't know where that comes from. It's just something, I've always liked shoes since I was a kid, and it's still something. But you know what I do to myself now is that I say, okay, if I'm going to buy this shoe, then I need to get rid of another shoe. And if I'm not willing to get rid of another shoe, then I'm not allowed to buy a specific shoe. Or buying with intention. That is something else that I teach, is that before you go and check out, before you go and do the thing, because what happens is we all get trigger happy, we all get finger happy, and it's so easy. All of the apps make it easy for us to buy things. And so pause and ask yourself, what is the intention behind this purchase? Is it something that I want or need? Is it just like my want, like I just want it right now? Because, you know, like fashion is something that if you're interested in fashion, fashion changes so much. So is it something that you're just trying to fill that period of time? Or is it something that you really need? Is it going to bring you closer to your long-term goals? And if you feel that that is not the case, then, you know, then it might cause you to pause and not just go through the motions of the clicking and the satisfaction of getting the item. And then understanding our history and our conditioning, our natural conditioning and history of what we thought, our money stories, basically, like what our parents taught us, what we learned, or what they didn't teach us. Because a lot of parents sometimes too, they don't talk about money. All they talk about is the lack of, or not having enough. Right. And so if that's the case, did that impact you? Are you now feeling like you said, I have to, it's my own money. Now I get to treat myself. Right.
And I think, and I think the discipline is regardless of how much you have, how much you're making, because if 2008 taught anybody anything, and even now, you know, there are people who are really struggling because they've lost their businesses and things like that. Yeah. If we're to learn from any of the cycles, we get to understand that the economy is cyclical. You know, what we have, what we don't have is cyclical too. And there are going to be times, there very well may be times that we do get to rely on what's in our savings. Yeah. Right. So it doesn't, just because we have a ton in savings doesn't mean that we can go spend it anytime we want. And I think one of the things that we learned, the best advice that was ever given to us was set a dollar amount. You know, it started out at like $50. If it was $50 or more, because $50 was enough to not be able to pay a bill at that time. Right. Yeah. Then we got to sleep on it for 24 hours before we purchased it. You know, now we've been able to move that dollar amount up. And you know, and then just like you said, I play delayed gratifications with those things. Okay. Do I want a new pair of shoes? Like right now it's a bedroom set. I want a new bedroom set. You know, and there's lots of reasons I'd like to have a new one. One, it's about what it represents for me, because the set that we have is actually, a cheap, it's been very, very good, but you know, one, the headboard, which is now in our son's room, we got rid of it because we did buy a new mattress, but the set we have, the nightstands came from a client that had staged their house. And rather than paying me his full commission when he had to reduce, when the market got short, he gave me the furniture we'd staged with. Oh, nice. Well, nice, but not nice, but not really. You know, I was like, I wanted my commission, right? Yeah. Yeah. But that was the only way he would go through with the sale when we reduced the price. And then the other furniture was when we'd lost the house and moved into the apartment, and they were IKEA things. So, you know, just from an abundance standpoint, like I want to create,
that feeling for yourself.
feeling. But can I go out and buy a new set? Absolutely. You know what? I have my real estate business. I've had several closings this past month. We have the money in savings. And I could. And I said, nope, I have a goal that I have a specific
goal in mind first.
Pipeline income goal that I want to create so it's like, okay, when I hit that, I get to do that. By the same time, I played a risk when my first deadline for that I didn't hit. And as a result, I'm going to get a job, which I didn't want. But there are so many people that, and I think that's the piece that's frustrating for me is, yes, we got into these situations. We've made good decisions, bad decisions, whatever. And when it's time to start making a difference, I want women to feel empowered to go out and fix the problem, not say, well, I just can't get a job. I can't do this. I can't. There are so many little things that we can do. We can practice delayed gratification. We can literally look at, to your point with Christmas, we had one where I did IOUs. Or gift certificate. They were actually gift certificates, 10 dates with mom or dad. We created experiences and the kids loved it. They asked for gift certificates.
Yes. And I was going to say, that's the other thing too, is that think of what you're not necessarily like, your kids aren't sacrificing because of where you are financially. Think that you are teaching them something that is something that they'll never learn or have this ever again. And that is what you said, experiences. And the fact that it's not quantity, it's like quality, because I started noticing that in my kids that they're like, I want this, or I want. And I just thought to myself, I can't create that in them because what's going to happen is they're going to follow that same sort of path if I don't put a stop to it now.
Right. And to your point, the words we use matter. If we're shopping and mine are, I want, I don't say we don't have enough.
Exactly.
Or I'm like, nope, that's not on the budget this month. No, that's not something we planned.
Yes.
What words are you using? Would you like to earn to create that for yourself? Yes. Sure. You want that? Great.
And that's what with my kids, when we go to Target and they say I want this or something, if they want something, I said, hey, we don't come to the store to just buy whatever we want all the time. Mama isn't buying just any random thing that she wants. No, we're coming here with an intention. We came here to get this certain thing. And I'll tell you, my kids will go to the store and they really don't ask for anything from the store. Once in a while, they'll say can I get a Pokemon card or something? And then I say, what are you doing with the ones you have? So, so again, helping them just understand that it's not a matter of I'm depriving you or I can't give you these certain things. No, it's not that. It's just that we want to create for ourselves experiences. So we could either have stuff and more stuff and more stuff, or we can live a life that we want where mama gets to take you on a bike ride. Mama gets to, do certain things with you, spend movie night or IOUs, like you said. Kids get a kick of that stuff because they just feel kind of or that movie Yes Day or something like that, right? Kids get a kick of that stuff because they feel like my parent wants to do stuff with me. And when they're young, you get to really kind of experience that with them and teach them that it's not just about the materialistic things, and hopefully teach them something different long-term.
Yeah. My younger ones don't remember a time when I worked away from the home. And my youngest absolutely doesn't remember all of the ups and downs and how bad it was when we were broke. So it can be different, it can be easy to forget, and then also just to bear in mind. So we still, one of the things that we did to save little bits here and there are things, and again, this falls into living within your means and the delayed gratification. When we would go out to dinner, the kids would say, Mom, does the kids meal come with a soda?
Oh,
And if it came with a soda, they got a kid's meal. If it didn't, a lot of times they would get the adult meal
Adult meal.
because that was our rule. Like, nope, we're going to get water.
yeah.
Because when a family of 5 goes out to dinner, you know, that's,
Oh yeah.
you're saving
that's
$20,
big time.
$25 just on drinks.
Another
You know,
thing
and we
that I always-
model the behavior.
Yeah, another point there is what I often say is making small adjustments. Sometimes
Mhm.
people think that their adjustments in life have to be very big, that like I cannot eat out for, because I was like that. I'm not going to say that it's just you. I thought that way too. Like,
Right.
okay, I can't eat out for the rest of the month or something, like we go to these extremes to try to create discipline
Mhm.
within ourselves. And honestly, sometimes it is just those minor adjustments. So
Right.
keeping track of how you're spending your money on a monthly basis, whether you need a budget or not, whether you need to, I like to call it money management, because it's you giving your money direction as to where it needs to go, as opposed to looking at an app, bless you, looking at an app and deciding, okay, I only have this much left to do this and that, right? So, and I call it like poking holes into a bag of water.
Right.
A
Look
lot
for
of
the
times we
leaky
don't
bucket.
notice those small things, because when we think of $300, so a challenge that I've given before is $10 a day. So most of the time, if you're drinking coffee, eating out, and so on, you're spending over $10 within that day, right? Because people will say, like, if I tell you to save $300 a month, most people will be like, that's too much money. I don't know that I can save that.
Right.
Okay, so let's do $10 a day. $10 a day, either paper bag it or something, whatever you need to do for 30 days. Guess what? If you do just $10 a day, you'll have $300 at the end.
Even
of
the
month.
exercise of writing down everything you spend your money
Yes,
on and
that's what
what that is at the end of the month, because those are it's those leaky buckets.
Yes.
And the leaky buckets, I believe, actually they hurt us more when things are good than when they're bad, right? I
Because
mean,
like
when they're bad, you have no choice. But when they're
Yeah.
good, you're doing it and you don't even realize.
You don't realize it. It's kind of like going to the 99-cent store, right?
Right.
So you think that you're going to the 99-cent store because you're going to save, or the 99-cent aisle at Target.
Right.
Right. And before you know it, you're $100 deep.
Right.
So that's the point with, having these smaller items, or like you said, leaky bucket, or having like a poked hole in your water bag, is these smaller adjustments that a lot of people sometimes don't realize, that will say, oh, I'll spend the $10, but because $300 seems like so much,
right?
But I'll continue to spend the $10 because you spend them in such small increments that before you know it, it's $300 later. And so understanding like what you're doing day in and day out, and don't be hard on yourself. Just write these things down so that you start understanding your own patterns.
And you'll get to, one of the things that we did that is I look back at is, the K-cups. For coffee, that was the big thing. And I was at the store one day and I'm like, okay, a bag of coffee costs me $10 and this K-cup thing costs me $23.
Yeah.
And I'm going through one a week either way. So, okay, I'm going to take the extra time and just make a pot of coffee instead of doing this, because it's costed, just it's a slight edge. It's just a little bit here and a little bit there. And it's so easy to come up with those things and create the priority. And of course.
And can I tell you guys that people that have $1 million businesses, because here's another misconception, is that people think that millionaires don't do this. Like, I was speaking at an event and we were talking about freedom and what does that mean to people. And two of the ladies had mentioned, I just want to be able to spend without thinking about it or without feeling guilty. Right. And I said, that's such a misconception. I'm sorry. That is such a lie that essentially you're having with yourself. Let me tell you something. If a millionaire thought, yes, they might be able to spend and not feel bad about it or feel guilty. But here's the thing, that they know that if they continue to spend without intention, without paying attention, that is what is called a leaky bucket. And so that can easily cost you millions over time, or hundreds of thousands over time, if they're not paying attention to what is coming out of their account. And so that's what I said, like, yes, you can spend, like, you can give yourself that freedom where you say, okay, if I want to buy something on Amazon, great, but do it with intention. Don't do it just because you can. Like, I can buy a bunch of stuff on Amazon if I want, but that's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not intentional. So I think that a common misconception is that people think that millionaires or people that have a lot of money somehow are careless about their financial situation. And that is not true.
And I think you set limits. You create I mean, business owners don't start their year off without a budget. They have an advertising budget and they go on. So we are out of time today, but I think it'd be great if we could get together, because I think these are super important conversations to have with people. And
yes,
let's make sure we get back together and share some more information. I know there's a wealth of information just on taxes and accounting that
yes,
that mamas need to run their households. So let's make sure we have a day that we get back together. Thank you so much for being on the show. How do the listeners reach you, Damari?
They can find me on Instagram, Damari Gold, or they can find me on damarigold.com. Also, TGS Accounting is my accounting firm, but you can find information on Instagram as well, or the website.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your time.
Thanks.